was what happened. Pakistan decides to take advantage of it. And we have enough details about how Pakistan did this. They immediately, they had an economic blockade, violation of the standstill agreement. Pakistan refused to give the essential supplies. Hari Singh immediately sends telegrams to India, to the Pakistani government, even the British Prime Minister, saying what is happening. And from 31st of August, we have a slow infiltration taking place. And if you go by if anyone wants to counter this, I can quote you the exact dates and figures Major General Scott gives in his diary. And effectively on the 20th of October, we have a full-on invasion. And at that moment, Hari Singh, on the 26th of October 1947, sends a letter with the instrument of accession to Mountbatten, who was our Governor General at that time, stating that I hereby accede to India, and I know you guys can't, naturally you won't be able to send your forces unless I accede. I hereby accede to India. And he attaches the instrument of accession, and along with the instrument of accession is a schedule. The schedule consists of the subjects on which we are allowed to legislate. And that is A is A is defense, then you have B, external affairs, C, communications, and D, what is called ancillary, that's like elections from Kashmir to parliament, things like that. Shall I proceed with this, or does anyone want to? One small, yeah.
I have a slight disagreement with Arvind. Firstly, I'd like to again provide a counter narrative. I don't think that the movement that was espoused by Sheikh Abdullah was an independence movement of Kashmir, in favor of Kashmir. It was actually a movement against the Dogra rule, because Hari Singh did not get along with Sheikh Abdullah and actually imprisoned him in 1946 for treason. But that apart, what is very necessary to understand over here is that Sheikh Abdullah had himself, and this is something that is very important, something that is missed by most of the people. Sheikh Abdullah was himself against the supposed referendum in Kashmir, and had actually himself said that he is in complete cahoots and is in complete concordance with Jawaharlal Nehru, which is why they were very good friends. Now, what's extremely necessary to understand here is that Nehru himself, after the UN resolution, wanted to bank upon Sheikh Abdullah's popularity in Kashmir to have a referendum to start with. So, because they were thinking that if there was a referendum that actually takes place, it will actually favor India, and Kashmir will end up falling with India because of Sheikh Abdullah's popularity in Kashmir itself. So, I don't agree that it was an independence movement as much as it was a movement to overthrow the Dogra rule. Secondly, now Arvind has spoken about this supposed Dogra genocide in Kashmir. Now, I will agree with him to a certain extent that the Dogra army was actually involved in a massacre, but the disputes of this the figures of this massacre are extremely disputed, and it's incredible to think of an army of 12,000 people, something that is actually recorded in Alex von Tunzelmann's book, Indian Summer, where Alex von Tunzelmann has said that there were 12,000 people in the Dogra army. Now, she has said that there was a genocide in Kashmir, but nowhere does she mention the figures, because the figures are extremely disputed. Now, it's extremely incredible to think that an army of 12,000 people actually massacred over 2 lakh people. Because what you need to understand is that even in that Dogra army, it was not a Dogra army to start with. Firstly, it was an army of the Kashmiri kingdom. Now, that was an extremely heterogeneous army which actually had Muslims also. Now, what's necessary to understand over here is that after the Pakistani invasion of Kashmir, a lot of these people, out of those 12,000, had actually defected towards Pakistan itself. So, therefore, the strength of that army had virtually gone down further than 12,000. And in fact, if you look at again Jaswant Singh's book, he has again said that members of the 4 J&K Rifles, which was a part of the British Army at that time, had actually also defected to Pakistan, so further reducing the strength of the Muslims in the army itself. Now, Arvind has spoken very elaborately about Major General Scott. Now, something that people completely miss about Major General Scott is that his episode and his involvement in Gilgit-Baltistan. Now, and that's something nobody talks about today, because Gilgit-Baltistan is a major chunk of Kashmir, and you need to understand that the British were actually in favor of Kashmir falling with Pakistan rather than India. This is again something that nobody talks about. Now, Major General Scott himself, now what had happened was that in 1935, Gilgit-Baltistan was given on a lease to the British for a certain sum. Now, come 1947, that lease was obviously on the verge of expiry, because what was happening was both these states were getting independence. Now, since that lease was expiring, there was a brigadier in the Indian Army called Brigadier Ghansara Singh, who was made the governor of Gilgit-Baltistan. Now, what Major General Scott did was he went with Major Brown, who was the commander of the Gilgit Scouts at that time, to the governor's house, who was Ghansara Singh. What happened subsequently was, and this is also elaborately recorded in Jaswant Singh's book, I would actually encourage all of you to read that book. It's a wonderfully written book, particularly this chapter, extremely explosive details. Major General Scott went to the governor's house, and he opened light machine gun fire on the governor's house. So what happened subsequently was that he gave an ultimatum to the governor and said that you surrender in 15 minutes, otherwise, and he sent a delegation of 2 Hindus, which one included the local inspector and one included the local sarpanch inside the governor's house, and actually gave an ultimatum to the governor that if you don't surrender in 15 minutes, I am going to annihilate the entire non-Muslim population of this area. And this is again something nobody is talking about. So I think it's very necessary to understand the British role over here, because the British weren't completely impartial, and if Major General Scott is giving certain figures in his diaries, they have to be taken with a pinch of salt. Secondly, what also needs to be understood is that, again, if you refer to Alex von Tunzelmann's book, she chronicles that Mountbatten had actually gone to, in November of 1947, he had gone to London for 2 days with his wife. And in those 2 days, he actually ended up meeting Winston Churchill, who had recently been voted out. And when he met Winston Churchill, and this is a quoted conversation in that book, and I would again encourage all of you to read that conversation. The conversation that ensued between Churchill and Mountbatten, Churchill had actually said that Patel and Nehru are mavericks. You are doing a great blunder to this nation of Britain by siding with India. It's extremely necessary for you to understand that Pakistan is going to be helpful to the British desires, and therefore I would encourage you to not be involved in this dispute at all. Now, that clearly shows that the British were actively involved. And this, coupled with the fact, if you read these facts with the fact that Major General Scott was himself involved in, issuing such threats, you would understand the deeper role over here. Now, I am not saying that there was no genocide in Kashmir at all that was committed by Hari Singh. Hari Singh was in fact an extremely autocratic ruler, and this is something that is acknowledged throughout history. But I do also tell you that these figures need to be taken with a pinch of salt, because what had actually precipitated this entire dispute was the fact that there was another genocide that was being committed by these Qawwalis who were infiltrating in India, and as Arvind and I agree, at least on this point, that is something that was actually used by the Pakistanis as a bargaining chip to infiltrate India.
I'd just like to say a few points before I give it to Monkey. Fine, that's true that the figures are contested. Do we have 2 lakh? And actually I quoted a very conservative estimate. Some people say 5 lakh. So I'm not even going there. But it's true that there was a genocide. And I didn't quote Major General Scott to talk about the figures of the genocide. So when you say we have to take Major General Scott with a pinch of salt, because I quoted Major General Scott's report of the 31st of August 1947, which he gives to the J&K government, which talks about the infiltration from Pakistan. And the reason I am giving that detail is because someone like Christopher Snedden argues that Pakistan didn't have a role in the invasion. But I have documented this fact. I didn't document this fact. Major General Scott has documented this fact on the 31st of August in his report as well. That's why I quoted General Scott. It is not about the figures of the massacre. My sources of the massacre is, of course, I told you Horace Alexander, Times of London, as well as Sheikh Abdullah's letter to Sardar Patel dated the 7th of October 1948, Nehru's letter to Hari Singh to 1st of December 1947. Let me just quote one line from Nehru's letter where he says, I quote, "The policy recently pursued in Jammu province has alienated the Muslims there very greatly and created a great deal of ill feeling in certain parts of the country." My other source, of course, I quoted was Gandhi. So, Major General Scott was not the basis of my argument about the Jammu massacre. And even if we differ about the extent of how many people died, there, I think, clearly these letters and this information there and the resentment which existed at that time clearly didn't come from the air. Clearly something did take place. And of course, when we talk about the later massacres, we'll talk that much later. And things about referendum and, that's, I've not reached there yet, because the referendum actually comes into force. The whole discussion on referendum starts after the 21st of April, if I'm right. 21st of April 1948, when the United Nations had passed a resolution regarding plebiscite and referendum. So I'm not going into that. Yeah, one can argue Sheikh Abdullah perhaps didn't argue for, it was not an independence struggle, as you said. It was a quick Kashmir movement against Hari Singh. But at the same time, I mean, I'll refer to this later on, 1948-49, Sheikh Abdullah's conversation with the US ambassador, Roy Henderson, who reports to the then US Secretary of State, Dean Acheson, where he talks about that people of Jammu and Kashmir want independence. And if that's not possible, we would rather join India than, and I quote, a government with a medieval Quranic outlook. I think Mukeet wants to say a few points, and after that I think I'll continue with the narrative, and if anyone differs with me as I'm going, please feel free to interrupt me and make your point.
Yeah, so a very important aspect which you really need to realize is Sheikh Abdullah is a very contentious figure. He was very popular in the valley, yes, but his popularity just was in those particular sections. His ideas, why he was really good friends with Nehru, because his ideas were very similar to Nehru's in terms of socialism and the way he went about his socialism, which is why one of the most effective ways, one of the most effective land reform policies were conducted by Sheikh Abdullah in his reign, in which he gave all the lands from the privileged nobles to the tillers. Basically, I think it was 1,80,000 acres of land were given to some 1,56,000 peasants or tillers, basically. So you need to understand why he's there. And the independence movement for Kashmir actually started in 1930s. So as I previously referred to the writings of Tyndale Biscoe and other such missionaries talking about the impoverished state of the Kashmiri Muslim. A very important aspect of that is that they started this particular organization called the, if I'm not mistaken, it's called the Muslim Conference. At a point in time, National Conference before National Conference is called the Muslim Conference. But a certain portion of individuals sort of allowed or gave scholarships to Muslims in Kashmir. This is around late 20s. Gave scholarships to Muslims to go and educate themselves in Aligarh Muslim University and other such institutions. When they came back and realizing the conditions that existed for the common populace, there and then in 1931 started the actual independence movement for Kashmir, which generally is not understood that very well, because it's not linked with the Indian independence movement, because we had a completely different ruler. Our ruler was a Dogra king, and when I say our also includes each and every individual that was staying in Kashmir, and this brings back to the larger point of the nature of oppression that existed within Kashmir since 15th century, 15th, 16th century. In addition to that, and also another aspect of it is the fact that the British government and their involvement in the whole independence issue. I think it's very well documented by that Mountbatten absolutely despised Jinnah for various reasons. I completely understand. But the thing is, there's this one, it's a very contentious claim that I'm going to make, and I'm sure it won't find much recognition. As per the Radcliffe War, there's, at least in the Pakistani narrative, it said that there's this one, so you need to understand why would Kashmir be associated with Pakistan? If it had to be associated with Pakistan, why would it be so? Because all the trade routes, the transport lines and every other such whatever India provides to Kashmir right now through the NH1, the National Highway 1A, was actually linked to Pakistan, Karachi and Lahore. That's where all the communication was going and all of their transport and everything was going. So it only seemed logical, if you have to argue it, that it would go to Pakistan at that particular point, and then in light of the fact that there was a Muslim majority and other such the reasons why any state or any place would go to Pakistan. Not to say that Kashmiris wanted to go with Pakistan, that's never claim made, but it made logical and legal sense for Kashmiris to say to Pakistan, alright? And there were portions. So Sheikh Abdullah was fairly popular, yes, but there were other portions, that there were people from his own party who did not like his molliness or like mollycoddling Nehru. There's actually a very interesting story, and so when Nehru, along with Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, had come to Kashmir in 1947 on a visit, and this I found in this book called Case of Freedom, which is written by multiple people. I encourage you to read it, and I have read something about this, so I can tell you this. So Tariq Ali writes that what happened is Nehru and Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan were visiting the valley and enjoying the sights and the vistas they were provided there. They were, so to understand this, so they were on a shikara, and a shikara has there are portions, there are buttons and everything else there. And there's this traditional Kashmiri outfit called a ferran, which is basically a tunic of sorts, right? It's a heavy tunic. And as they were passing under a bridge, there were some Kashmiris, like normal Kashmiri individuals, who were standing on top of the bridge. But interestingly enough, they weren't wearing anything underneath their ferrans. So what they effectively were showing Nehru and Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, it was very different alternative means of resistance or protest, like literally showcasing a certain aspect of your manhood to them in their faces. It sort of represents the idea certain people may have at that particular point in time. So you can't always hold Sheikh Abdullah as the one sole individual who represented the Kashmiri majority. He didn't, but he was very influential. He had his own personal, he was fairly political in nature. He was a very interesting man. He also, oddly enough, if I may refer back to like recent history in 1970s and 80s, disbanded the notions of student unions in Kashmir. So you won't find a Kashmiri leader. The reason why, because the colleges in Kashmir don't allow for student unions. That's also sort of like showcases the way he went about his things. But that's me, and then I'll conclude.
I slightly may differ that I still believe Sheikh Abdullah was held in much higher esteem among, okay, he may not have represented everyone, but clearly a substantial portion of the population there followed Sheikh Abdullah. But I was just telling the Hitta that this is 1 hour and we haven't crossed 1940s. So I think I'll just quickly go through the narrative as I'm going along, and please feel free to interrupt me if you all want.
I just have one to disagree with Mukeer a bit on something. I'll just take 2 minutes. Firstly, I think it's a very, saying that Kashmir was a Muslim majority province and therefore it made logical sense for Kashmir to go with Pakistan is a very, very simplistic way of understanding things, and I completely disagree with you on that.
No, I don't agree with that idea. I'm not agreeing with the idea that
Okay,
Kashmir should have
if
followed.
if that is an idea that people have, then I completely disagree with it. And my reasons are also very cogent. And the reason is that if you look at Kashmir, Kashmir was a province. It was not a state. Therefore, if you look at the Indian Independence Act of 1947, the two-nation theory does not apply to a province, right? So it depends on the ruler whether the ruler wants to stay with either India or remain independent or go with Pakistan. Now there were many districts, major districts like Chittagong Hills in Bangladesh that were Hindu majority but actually ended up going to Bangladesh. Similarly, there were 4 districts in Sindh. I think it was Mirpur, Khas, Thar, and I'm forgetting names. But there were Hindu majority districts in Sindh that actually ended up going to Pakistan. Now, you can criticize it, but that was a problem in the formula that was used by to actually emphasize the two-nation theory. And therefore, what happened was that it so happened that Hari Singh actually acceded to the instrument of accession. And it is irrelevant whether the people in the province were of a Hindu majority or whether they were a Muslim majority, because what is relevant over here is that the formula that was used did not take any of this into account. Now, secondly, what is also very necessary is, and this is why I had contextualized this debate earlier, that there was actually no discord between the, and that's why I disagree fundamentally with a lot of characterization that Mukeer has provided, that there was actually no discord between the Hindus and the Muslims to start with. prior to 1947. The only recorded instance, as I had pointed out, was 1931, which was a minor riot between the Hindus and the Muslims. Something that is also recorded in Indian summer. Now, what you need to understand now is that it was the Pakistanis over here who had, as I had said, had taken advantage of this precarious situation in India and had were actually very scared about Sheikh Abdullah's popularity, and which is why they actually ended up intervening. Now, I think we can.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, see, right. The thing is, what I was trying to tell you is that the multiple claims which have been made. So, for example, an idea to counter it, like as normally a politically would counter it, the fact that Kashmir ideally should have gone with Pakistan. When I made that contention skin, that's basically how the two nation theory worked. For example, if you take the example of Hyderabad, obviously the ruler did not want to accede to India, he wanted to accede to Pakistan, but like that really didn't make sense for him and for nobody else, which is why Indian with Patel went ahead with like the Indian army and took that land because it was a Hindu majority area. So that idea exists. Another thing is Abdullah wanted arguably to have a succession with India. This one, what's his name? Ranjit Singh, Hari Singh. Hari Singh did not. Hari Singh wanted independence. I need to remember this particular fact.
Okay.
Alright, and even when he signed the instrument of accession, there was this one portion there which asked for a referendum, which was a prerequisite. So he was like, once we have done away with the Pakistan problem, you can come in and we'll have a referendum to determine, which is what the United Nations in the Resolution 48 also stated. Even though it gave certain preconditions, which were first, Pakistan should demilitarize, India should demilitarize, and then after there are two, three ways of going about it. One is that we'll have a 10-year trusteeship. Kashmir will be a trusteeship of of the United Nations, and after that we'll have a referendum. Otherwise, after the demilitarization happens, we can go ahead and have the plebiscite. And then there's a Dixon formula which says that Jammu and Ladakh should go to India, Balochistan, all the northern parts of Kashmir should go to Pakistan, and Bali will determine its own fate on the basis of a referendum. So there are multiple contentions that existed, and specifically in relation to the province, state, whatever you want to call it, that kind of argumentation existed. So you cannot sort of like, I understand where you're coming from, but still like that's one aspect of it that you have to consider.
Yeah, I'll just one thing.
Yeah. No, so with regard to that, I just had like one very small point to make, which is that like the Hyderabad example isn't entirely in order because of the fact, and that's how I tried to characterize to you the history of Muslims in Kashmir. The idea that like the Kashmiri Muslims had a unique history, and the fact that they had no discord with the Hindus for one. Two, they were forcibly converted largely, and I mean that's like a major factor. So like I mean, up till the fourth generation of people who were Muslims, they were largely like there for either convenience, either Muslims for convenience or out of like necessity. And because of that, they did not have like such strong associations with Islam as such to like be part of Pakistan. And like that's something that, and apart from that, the lack of discord between the Hindus and the Muslims at that point of time. That is like a major reason why I don't feel that the two-nation theory is like working exactly how it did over there in this.
The thing is, now that you have an interview, I'm not under any circumstances saying that there were discourse between Hindu and Muslim, that's the point of time. And I do not in any way say that they should have espoused the idea of Pakistan and gone with it. There's no way. I'm saying for a British mind, they would have legally argued that yes, it's because of the duality in which they view the world. It's Hindu-Muslim, they're all divided, so you give the Hindu majority area goes to Hindus, Muslim majority goes to Muslims. And I'm not arguing this wasn't the point of my argument at all. And again, I re-stress the fact, and even though I dispute the idea of the history that you have in terms of the forcible conversion and then the fact that yes, I understand the kind of Islam that exists in Kashmir at any point in time would not conform with the ideas of Wahhabist form of Islam. There's no disputing the fact that there was Sufistic form of Islam, and in addition to that, there was communal harmony. But again, because I made this point earlier, in light of the fact that you view that condition at that instant, the Kashmiri populace, majority of it, not all of it, but majority of it were impoverished, did not have any subsistence, were effectively forced laborers. And when the independence movement started in 1930, it had a secular color, and it did for the longest time. And so you need to keep that in mind. The fact is, the oppressors that existed, which was the Dogra ruler and the nobles, most of the nobles were Pandits. I'm not saying still it goes into that kind of an anti-Hindu rant, but you need to understand that it so happened that now that we undertake a lot of historical revisionism and like try to understand history with our sensibility to today, that may not have been the case at that particular point in time. So it wasn't anti-Hindu, it was anti a social class which is oppressing you, and that's the nature of the independence movement at that particular point in time.
So I think we'll just like Arvind can wrap up the narrative, and I think we would want to open the floor for a few comments after that.
Yeah, so I also agree. I think we should have a discussion on the ideas once we finish with this, the basic history I'd like to outline. So I'll quickly go through, I won't go too much into detail about 370 and things like that. Okay, so where did we stop? So yeah, when with the Pakistani invasion, what I said was Pakistan took advantage of the resentment which existed in Kashmir after the Jammu massacre, and then of course the accession happens on the 26th of October 1947. In fact, Mountbatten as Governor General replies to that the letter of Hari Singh by saying that it is my policy of the government that after the dispute is cleared, that we shall settle the matter by reference to the, actually it says referring to the people to settle the matter. Now, strictly legally speaking, that really has no legal implication, for the simple fact that the Indian Independence Act only provides for the Governor General to either accept or reject accession. It does not envisage conditional accession. So this was similar to that. It was a conditional accession. But we can't strictly speak in terms of law in vacuum. You have to understand the ground realities at that time. So then again, the forces move in. We have the first war, and then India goes to the United Nations. We lodge a complaint under Article 35 of the UN Charter, whereby anyone can move to the UN Security Council if there's a situation which endangers international peace. That happened on the 1st of January 1948. That was on the advice of Mountbatten. Many still argue that was a wrong thing, that we should have continued with the war and taken over the territory. Be that as may be, I'm not going into the details of the various UN resolutions. Maybe we can have a discussion on that afterwards. Then what happens is basically, this is the same time, 1950 is the same time when our constitution comes into effect. Prior to 1950, while the Constituent Assembly of India is having discussion, the Nehru and his government believes that we must put in a provision, even if it's an interim arrangement, about what is happening in Kashmir. And that is how you have Article 370 being drafted. And Article 370 basically provides that till the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir is formed, if India is to make any decisions regarding any of the concurrent or the union list, which is not mentioned in the instrument of accession. So in the instrument of accession, which I referred to before, clearly mentions the 4 subjects in which you can talk. So if it's anything apart from that, but comes under the union list or concurrent list, we have to take the concurrence of the state government. And then the state government's concurrence must go before the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. And if you want the specific provisions, you'll find this in Article 370, clause 1, subclause B, subclause 2, and Article 371B. And the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir making the final decision comes under Article 370, subclause 2. So basically, one may argue that's why the marginal note of the Article 370 says it's a temporary provision. So basically, it's a transitional provision which says till the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir decides, we can make this arrangement. And what does the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir decide? There is an election. We have an election. This is a fact which we forget. We have an election, and the National Conference wins, unopposed in most seats. And the National Conference, they have the deliberations in the Constituent Assembly, and they form the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir. Article 3 of the Constitution mentions that we are a part of India. But there are a few intervening factors which we have to remember before this. Before the actual ratification, the ratification of the instrument of accession by the Constituent Assembly happens in February, the exact date was I think the 6th or 4th of February of 6th of February 1954. That's when the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir ratifies the instrument of accession. Before that, something else happens. The instrument of accession has a specific clause. That's clause 7. Clause 7 of the Instrument of Accession talks about nothing in this, prevents me from from entering into further agreements when a future constitution comes about. And you must remember at that time, the constitution of India, at that time when they acceded